Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX with me, Devika Chopra. Our top focus: U.S. President Donald Trump has once again left the world markets guessing after hinting at a possible trade deal with China. After a slew of tit-for-tat tariffs between the two nations, Donald Trump has stated that China has reached out to the United States of America for a trade deal. After raising Chinese tariffs to a staggering 245%, Donald Trump has now signaled at reconciliation, saying that he is not going higher and may even go lower on tariffs on China. Trump has revealed that China reached out to the United States, categorically saying that he thinks the two countries are going to make a very good deal. Joining me on the broadcast is Andrew K.P. Leung, a Chinese strategist from Hong Kong. We also have with us Mr. Quinton A. Hitchcock, American political consultant, joining me from Washington. Let me first begin this conversation with Mr. Andrew K.P. Mr. K.P., I want to understand from your perspective the fact that both America and China have hit 245% on tariffs. Clearly, do you feel with the latest statements coming out that some sense has finally prevailed between the two administrations?
Well, when you reach these high numbers in terms of tariffs, even higher numbers don't make sense anymore because there's simply no trade possible between the two countries. And in fact, these tariffs are hurting China as much as hurting the United States economy. I mean, you look at the earlier trauma in the bond market, which prompted Trump to pause for 90 days on these huge tariffs on a number of Western and other countries except China, suggesting that that could lead to a possible recession. Think about the earlier, the past huge tariff, the so-called Smoot-Hawley Act in the 1930s, preceding the Great Depression. So these tariffs are not without cost to the American economy and in fact to the vast majority of the American people, as their daily necessities, their consumer products are increasingly find themselves in short supply. Because if you go to any American supermarket, nearly all the stuff is made in China or marked, even though if they are not marked made in China, China is embedded in them in terms of components, materials, rare earths, and even logistics, because the world's largest 7 container ports out of the top 11 are located in China. But I think that we are also missing a big part of the Trump strategy. There was just announced a few hours ago there's going to be huge levies imposed on China-made ships. So it's not just tariffs, it's targeting to China's shipping industry. These levies are so huge as to amount as to something like $1.5 million US per call, including other levies. The idea is to starve the China's overarching shipping industry of oxygen, so as to bring shipping back to the United States, shipping and shipbuilding, because at the moment, the United States only builds 1 out of 1,000 ships around the world. The bulk of the order has gone to China. So this is going to be the second wave of coercive tactics to make America great again. Then there is a third wave, and people seem not paying too much attention to it. The third wave takes the form of the so-called Mar-a-Lago Accord. Under that accord, the United States is likely to prolong the so-called exorbitant privilege almost indefinitely by issuing 100-year Treasury bonds without interest to substitute the existing bonds. Now, if a sufficient number of nations are cajoled or strong-armed into accepting this, this would greatly change the Americans' huge debt servicing burden, and possibly leading into a golden age, according to Trump's calculation. So I think that it's not just the tariffs, all these coercive tactics and measures and policies are likely to roil the relationship, not only between China and the United States, but China and the rest of the world, in a world where, of course, China plays a very important part as now a defender of the so-called liberal world order, founded and so far guarded by the United States, but now the United States has turned itself into a rogue state, trying to destroy the liberal world order, while China is increasingly being perceived as its defender. So we are in Alice in Wonderland. Things are getting curiouser and curiouser.
Okay. All right, Mr. Andrew Kepi, I also want to understand from your perspective, how soon do you feel the US and China will be able to come up with a trade pact that works for both nations? And how do you think the markets and the global economies will now recover from the impact that the past few months have already had?
Well, I think that all these tariffs, all these measures, and all the three waves of Trump's grand strategy suggest that there are real problems in the imbalance between the two largest economies. China's saving too much, but exporting too much, whereas the America is the other way around. And of course, after years of outsourcing manufacturing, the manufacturing capacities of the United States have been hollowed out, leading to some less competitive industries with depressed wages, feeding into a mood of despondency and anger, which is captured by J.D. Vance, Hillbilly Elegy, the best-selling book, which propelled him to the vice presidency. Also, China's manufacturing industries are so competitive, not least in electric vehicles. In spite of tariffs, they're still much sought after because of innovation. It's not just because of the price. It's the innovation, it's high quality, it's so competitive because China's been honing its manufacturing efficiency for decades. And that's not very good for China, 100%, because there's no use for China to decimate the automobile industries in Europe, automobile industries in the United States. So I think China's got to find a way to balance that. The one way to doing this is what my experience by seeing in my own eyes when I visited London last year is famous black cabs. Half of them are now manufactured in electric vehicle version by a company called LEV small c. LEV stands for London Electric Vehicles. C stands for Commentary, where all these new electric vehicle black cabs are made. But that company is owned by China. It's called Geely, but it's manufacturing in the United Kingdom, producing jobs, adding to the local economy. Now, this model can be replicated to Europe and to the United States with helps from someone like Elon Musk.
Okay, all right. Ms. Andrew Kepi, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX with that perspective. In other news, viewers, US President Donald Trump has also expressed confidence in a trade deal with the European Union, calling it 100% possible after weeks of standoff and Trump's hardline stance on trade and tariffs. The US President has now signaled to a willingness to compromise, saying that he is sure of a trade deal with the EU. However, the deal will be a fair one. This comes after Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni reached the White House, holding bilateral talks with Trump. While there has been no announcement of a trade deal, both leaders have expressed optimism following the meeting. Let me take this forward with Mr. Quinton Hitchcock. Mr. Hitchcock, I want to understand from your perspective, how crucial is it for the US and the EU to also figure out a trade deal?
It's incredibly important. It's incredibly important. It's also important to realize there's no love lost between the EU and this Trump White House. The two have been at odds virtually for the last 5, 6 years. And it's not just about trade practices either. The president has a view that the European Union, by large, has been taking advantage of the United States with unfair trade practices. But there's another element to this that I think might be just as important, if not more important, and that is the funding of their defense. We see this a lot with, with the Ukraine-Russia war, and the president and much of our country has had a gripe and had a complaint that the European Union has relied too heavily on the United States military force. We see that again with how much money the United States has sent to Ukraine. So that's another element to this that is fueling, I think, a lot of tensions between President Trump and the EU. But to your point, it's very, very important that the two countries can come to some type of an agreement, because I think we can all agree tariffs, whether it's with China, whether it's with the EU, whether it's with Canada or Mexico, they don't help the American consumer. They don't help the global consumer. So that's something that our president and I think a lot of global leaders are very cognizant of, and it's a high priority for them to make sure that they can bring down costs for everyday consumers.
Mr. Hitchcock, at the same time, you must have heard what Mr. Andrew Leung has also said, that there are certain models that possibly can be adopted and adapted to suit the needs of the United States of America. But do you feel that somewhere it was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction by the Trump administration to deliver on its promises of having a world where trade is more balanced?
I think you could make the argument that everything the president does is a knee-jerk reaction. But again, let's remember that this president is a deal maker. The reason he got elected a second term is because much of the American public, much of the Republican Party trust his judgment as it pertains to economic policy and structuring trade deals between the United States and other countries. As it pertains to China, for example, the president's view on China is that this is a country who is not engaged in fair trade practices towards the United States. And we can talk tariffs all day long. The number, frankly, is irrelevant. I do agree that the higher the tariff number is, and frankly, the more we talk about tariffs, the more it becomes a negative thing for both countries' economies, the more it becomes a negative thing for prices, daily goods, and the markets and the consumers. But this is playing out exactly like the president wanted. What was the president's number one goal, the number one mission for these trade disputes? This is my personal opinion, I don't necessarily think it was about bringing manufacturing back to America. Okay, we know that there's data that shows that most Americans like the idea of manufacturing coming back to America, but the reality is that so few Americans actually want to work in manufacturing jobs. So that's not something that I think the president was aiming for. I think he wanted to bring China to the table to renegotiate better trade deals. And as the president said, I think it's a well-known fact now that China's reached out multiple times to try to re-engage in discussions. So is this a knee-jerk reaction? It absolutely is, whether it's with China, whether it's with any other country. I don't think there's anybody that agrees with that more than Canada. But the president is a deal maker. That is his prerogative, and he wants to renegotiate deals with China, with the EU, with Canada, with Mexico, and a lot of other countries who he has viewed have taken advantage of the American economy for too long.
All right, Mr. Hitchcock, stay on with us. We have some more news, viewers. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is all set to visit India from the 21st of April till the 24th, accompanied by U.S. Second Lady Usha Vance and their children. The Vance's visit comes amidst global upheavals caused by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff war, with the visit providing an opportunity to review the progress in bilateral relations. Vance will meet Prime Minister Modi on the 21st upon his arrival, before attending other engagements in Delhi. During his visit, J.D. Vance is majorly expected to discuss economic and geopolitical priorities with the Prime Minister, providing momentum to an early trade deal amidst negotiations with the United States. Remember, India and the US are looking at augmenting bilateral trade ties to $500 billion. The initial round of discussions for this concluded last month, and virtual sectoral discussions are expected to commence in the coming weeks. Priority areas include increasing market access, lower duties and non-tariff barriers, as well as deepen supply chains. With me on the broadcast, Mr. Ajay Dua and Mitali Nikore as well. Mr. Dua, of course, the fact that J.D. Vance is making this trip to India somewhere signals that the work on the trade deal and the talks regarding the tariffs have progressed to a position where India is now comfortable having J.D. Vance here. What really do you feel will be the outcome of this visit?
Thank you for having me, Devika. I think, as the purpose has been stated by the White House while announcing the visit of the Vice President, it said that it's to review what was agreed to on the 13th of February when President Trump and Mr. Modi had met in the White House. That the progress made on whatever had been agreed to at that time is high up on his agenda. And one specific item which has been highlighted is to launch the Indo-American technological partnership called the Trust. That was also announced on the 13th of February in the White House. That the launching of that would be one ceremonial function, which Mr. Vance will be attending, and probably Prime Minister Modi would also be there. The second is, of course, review of the economic and geopolitical factor issues. And in economic factors, as you said, nothing would be higher than reviewing the BTA, which again was mentioned in the month of February, say when the President or Trump was invited by Mr. Modi to visit India in September or October, when India is to host a summit meeting of the Quad members, the 4 Quad members, that during that time the BTA could be signed here. That probably might need to be hastened if Mr. Trump is going to pursue, after the 90-day pause which he granted on the 5th of April, after announcing it on the 2nd, or 3 or 4 days later, a pause was granted on the reciprocal tariffs, but he said it's a 90-day pause. That would end sometimes in July, April to July. So unless that's getting extended, and that issue might get discussed here, I think the importance of the visit, apart from the fact that Mrs. Usha Vance is an Indian origin person, but she's coming as the second lady, and they do have several official engagements, apart from taking their 3 small children to Agra and Jaipur. I think that's second on a tourism kind of visit. That President attaches importance to arriving at an greater understanding with India than the reciprocal tariffs of 26% have kind of given a different image. But as has been said by the previous 2 speakers, Mr. Andrew as well as Mr. Quinton, I think the President might be revisiting a lot of these reciprocal tariffs. He does realize that these can be a matter of strategy to negotiate, get people to our countries to come and negotiate. And with China, probably he succeeded by his threat of 10%, after that another 105%, making it 215, and now talking of 245%. Yes, the Chinese, I think, are very practical people. They have already said, we are willing to talk, but it is going to be on mutual respect. It's that we are not going to cave in. We might be a number 2 economy and way behind the Americans, but for them the American market is extremely important, and so are the resources of China important for the US and for the rest of the world. Let's not underplay that at all. Example, It's just the rare earths. Rare earths can stop a whole lot of tech, technological evolution, technological production, which is taking place around the world. And the Chinese do have a command over it. Let's not deny that. India might be number three or number four, but the difference between what our deposits are, how much we've commercially exploited, how much China has done, is vast. So let's recognize where the strengths lie, and let's not sit on our kind of pride saying because I'm demanding it, you have to
Okay.
come to me your knees. I think that's not going to get the world anywhere. Recessions would be round the world if we do not negotiate. I want to say so categorical. It's going to hurt the United States much more than even it will hurt China. China has been recording growth for the last 2 years. Let's not think of China, which was during the COVID or soon after that, when its economy had been hurt considerably. It has recovered. Its and its military strength, also particularly the naval strength, let's not underestimate it.
Okay.
Yes, it is going to hurt. I'll just take a second. It's going to hurt them that if the export of chips for use in AI of China is banned or prohibited. That's something which was attempted yesterday. And today, talking about shipping, that restrictions be imposed, severe restrictions on Chinese shipbuilding and Chinese use of the Chinese ships itself. Yes, it will hurt them, but it's not going to be fatally, China is not going to be fatally hurt. I would only say let President Trump be pragmatic and say, yes, his message has been received that the US can hurt everybody, but with that signal having been sounded, thereafter it should be now level headed negotiations on all sides, including with India.
Okay, I want to bring in Mitali Nikore. Mitali, I want to leave the last word with you. As far as this visit of the Vice President is concerned to India, how crucial will it be for India and the US to perhaps make some sort of an announcement that gives the markets the relief that they need as far as the tariff war is concerned? It's crucial. Like I said, it's important. The markets have been hit in the US, the markets have been hit in India as well. Of course, they've been hit the world over. So how crucial is it for the US administration to also have something fruitful come out of this visit for the markets to get the much needed relief that they were looking for?
Absolutely, absolutely, Devka. Thanks a lot for bringing me in finally at the end. But I think the real question, and I think both KP, Quinton have really, brought that out, is that there is a need for these economies to now think about starting to work together. I mean, there's a need for, always, the US has been one of the most collaborative nations. The US has always been one of those countries where, they've kind of created a lot of platforms historically for countries to come together and work in multilateral systems. Now, with this new administration, we see a little bit of a pivot and we see that, almost like a 360-degree turn. And to say that, okay, now we are changing the terms of our agreement. But for India and for the India US relationship, it's very critical for us to keep on working together, to keep on negotiating, to sort of protect some of the sectors, particularly, which are, sectors in which India and the US are highly intertwined, like, for example, technology, information technology, but also electronics, semiconductors, financial services. These are sectors which are highly important to the Indian economy. I mean, today, when we look at the now exports, of iPhones from India to the US, it's reached its highest point. Do we really want to stop that? Like Quinton said, it might be a sort of vision to have more and more manufacturing in the US, but it is quite understood that that manufacturing has to happen in friendly countries outside the US. So can India really, come in that supply chain, insert itself in these supply chains and be a trusted partner for the US is really the opportunity that India, has today. And it's being served on a platter in some senses. And it's very important that India should also get its house together. We have to get our ease of doing business in place. We have to get our supply chains in place. We have to get our labor regulations in place so that we can really emerge as an efficient manufacturing economy as well. as well as a services economy, because it's not only manufacturing but services exports where India and the US can cooperate much more. So I really do feel that in this summit, can we have an announcement? I'm pretty sure there will be many announcements. When the president and the prime minister met, they announced a $500 billion, trade relationship has to be built by 2030. The terms of reference for this have already been signed. There are a number of sectors that have been identified for deepening the trade relationship between India and the US. The IMEC corridor and discussions around that have also been, hastening. And Europe is a major player when it comes to the IMEC corridor, the India, Middle East, European corridor. And therefore, it becomes very important that India aligns very clearly with the Middle East, with Europe, and with the US for ensuring seamless trade in the future between these regions.
All right. On that note, I thank all of our guests for joining us on the broadcast.